So let's get started. So thanks so much for
Excellent.
tuning in. My name is Eric Elliott, and I'm the Advanced Hunter Education Coordinator with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And as a way of introducing our topic tonight, we've been kicking it around a lot in the chat about being lost in the woods. And Andrew, here's my horror story. So chasing elk in Colorado in really steep, nasty country. And so, yeah, it's getting dark, and I'm thinking, okay, no big deal. I've got a headlamp, I've got batteries, I've got a GPS, I've got my camp marked. And then it gets completely dark, and I'm looking in my pack, and to my utter horror, no GPS.
Yeah.
I could not find my GPS anywhere. And so I started walking in the direction of camp, and everything looked so unfamiliar. I finally resorted to yelling. I hollered at my brother, "Hey,
It's a
Chad."
technique.
And then I see a headlamp turn on. And so I was like, okay, that's my camp. So I walked to the camp, and it was not my camp. And the response from the person in camp was, "You must be from the camp from California." And so sorry, I did not represent California well in that scenario. But the purpose of the webinar tonight is to kind of take some of the mystery out of navigation and keep people from experiencing that sinking and super scary feeling of being lost.
Yeah,
So
it's horrifying.
Here to help us tonight is Andrew Poincott. Andrew is a certified hunter education instructor. He's a former law enforcement officer and taught land navigation courses in the U.S. Army Infantry. Andrew, thanks for being here tonight and serving
My
us
pleasure.
this way. I appreciate you, brother. Take it away.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity. This is one of those things that I enjoy geeking out about and have a real passion for. So it's my honor, my pleasure to be able to share that with the team here tonight. So check it out. This is a basic land navigation survey course, a QAD. That's quick and dirty. We've got a lot of slides to get through, a lot of ground to cover, so to speak. None of this is intended tonight to be able to send you out into the dark tomorrow with your map and compass and expect you to have that degree of confidence or competency to go out and execute on the task that we're going to be introducing to tonight. This is to give you a sense of like, hey, you know, they say you don't know what you don't know until someone shows you what it is you don't know. This is to give you an introduction to the broad discipline of land navigation, hit on a number of things that when you decide to go out later and start poking around and exploring on the YouTubers and seeing folks talk about these topics, to be able to, like, hey, I remember this. I have some sense of familiarity with this topic, and allow those pieces to start coming together and congeal in the old gray matter. I have here on the introductory slide my personal contact information on my Proton mail. You are welcome to reach out to me. I will send you a PDF copy of the presentation tonight. I will send you a copy of some of the public source materials that we use to put these courses together, including the in-person land nav courses that I teach here in SoCal and planned future field training exercises, Central and Northern California as well. I will share the material with you. So please don't be shy. Just shoot me an email. Say, hey, I'd like a copy of tonight's presentations and source material. My email is going to pop up in different points here in the presentation. But like I said, don't be shy. Reach out to me. Happy to engage with you. So we're going to cover 4 key learning objectives tonight, like covering some map basics, about a 45-minute time period. We're going to cover compass basics, 25 minutes. How to program your GPS. Wait a second, someone said programming. Yes, we're going to work on programming our GPS. and how to plot our GPS coordinate on maps. So the course is intended, or the survey course is intended to take about 90 minutes. We're already about 10 minutes into it, so I got 80 minutes to cover this stuff. It's going to be fast. It's going to be furious. Do not hesitate to include your questions in the chat. We will be taking breathers along the way, so I can catch my breath, answer any questions that continue to pop up. And as well, once we conclude the main presentation tonight around 7:30 p.m., I am happy to stay on for about another 30, 45 minutes here with the good LT, answer any specific questions that team members here in the audience may have relating to the material that we covered tonight. So without further ado, we're going to be jumping into map basics. Here, real quick, the key references that we are using to build this presentation, the two that we have here, the field manual, map reading, land navigation from the great Department of the Army, as well as How to Find Your Way, which is GTA, Graphic Training Aid, not Grand Theft Auto, Graphic Training Aid 0502-013. I will send these to you. They're great, great, great resources, but I can't emphasize to folks here tonight enough. This book right here, Wilderness Navigation, I have covered a plethora of books related to the topic of land navigation. This is by far one of the best out there. Do the publisher a favor, go on Amazon.com, buy them out, all right? Go to their site, buy them out. These books are worth keeping in your pack, keeping on the bookshelf, keeping on the nightstand, if you so choose, and constantly revisiting. Also get it on Kindle, however else you decide to consume your e-test, but can't encourage you guys enough to get your hands on a copy of that. So map basics, we're going to be covering tonight tools for reading maps, i.e. tools for the trade, identifying and read a map legend, identify terrain features on a topographic map, measuring distance on a map, and where to buy maps and the online resources that are available to folks to get maps prior to going out into the field. Tools for the trade here, all right? Over here, we've got a semi-waterproof map case. Can't say enough good things about having one of these things. One, you can put your maps in it in a way so as the portion of the terrain that you're navigating in is displayed. You can throw your protractor. Yeah, protractors, we're going to cover what these are and how to use them in more detail. In there with your map, you can keep your base plate compass or backup base plates compass in the map case, so you're always able to quickly orient your map. A straight edge ruler for marking azimuths on your map. 3x5 cards, so that when you're at 14,000 feet hunting mule deer and elk in Colorado and you're having a little hard time doing math in your head to convert your grid to magnetic azimuths or your magnetic azimuths to grid, you can do the math on this. Also write notes to yourself and be alone with your thoughts. A small GPS receiver, your mechanical pencils, some means of waterproofing your 3x5 cards as well as your map. And listen, I can't emphasize this to you enough. Some form of what we call smart cards that you can quickly reference back to when you find yourself in a elevated situation of stress or an elevated stressful situation where you think you may be lost or just under the pressure to perform out in the field. Just your brain's lacking oxygen because you're again at that 14,000 feet and you're a sea dweller like me, and it's just you're just not firing all these cylinders. Something that you can refer back to help you with clues to successfully navigate in the field. So your navigational aids, little cheat sheets here. Protractors. What are these things? Okay, 4 sides, right? Looks like a square. You utilize these basic tools to plot bearings as well as your location on a topographic map. Topographic maps are printed in multiple sizes, scales. We're going to get into all that. As you can see on these protractors, there are multiple scales on these protractors. 1 in 24 thousandths, common, I'm going to cover that. 1 in 63 thousandths, 1 in 50 thousandths right here, 1 in 250 thousandths. Each one of these cuts, each one of these corners are designed to be used with a specific type or scale of map. You want to have a couple of these on your person if you're going to be navigating map and compass. But familiarize yourself with this. We're going to be revisiting these tools later on in the presentation. So, types of maps you're going to encounter. Common maps that you'll see out there: land management maps. Those are the maps that people use for surveying property boundaries, things like that. Recreation maps. That's when you go to like the local gas station, or you get to the greeting booth at the national park, and they hand you something that has the buffalo over here, and you'll see the eagle over there, and here's a little road. Recreation maps. Sketch maps. Think on the back of a napkin. Guidebook maps. Those are all useful tools. You don't want to use them to navigate overland, but tonight we're going to be focusing on using good old topographic maps. We talked about scales a little bit ago about in relation to the scales that are available in protractors. Now it's about how to match protractors with the maps. All right. Scale of a map is a ratio between measurements on the map and the measurements in the real world. Common maps produced by USGS, it's the United States Geological Survey for wilderness travel, is a 7.5-minute series. Understand that 7.5-minute series covers 1/8 of latitude and longitude on the surface of the Earth, or 1 in 24,000 scale. Up in Alaska, in those areas, those big pieces of terrain, talking about 15-minute scales because it's big. So 4 of those 7.5-minute maps pieced together for a 15-minute scale. Excuse me. Those 15 minute series maps are the 1 in 63,360 scale. Remember seeing that on the protractors? There it is. The rest of the world, because metric system, uses the common 1 in 25,000 and 1 in 50,000 series maps. You'll see that again later in the presentation. Now, be aware, you go to REI or your favorite local outfitter, they're going to sell these fancy little, what seem like waterproof maps, recreation maps, and you're going to see they have some oddball scales listed on there. Like in one case, like a very popular map series that's out there, 1 in 126 720,000 scale. You see something like that, immediately that's suspect. Okay, don't bet your life on trying to navigate or use something like that for any sort of precision overland travel or navigation. So understand, the Earth is round, it's not flat. And back in the day when they first started to map out the Earth, they divided it up in what's called longitude and latitude, right? Longitude being a long way around, going around the world. Latitude, think of climbing a ladder, going up and down. So at some point in time, cartographers, the folks who make maps, decided, hey, we need a better way of making a 2-dimensional representation of our 3-dimensional world. So they essentially turned our spherical world into a nice little cone that they could then lay out in a 2-dimensional representation of the planet and map that thing out. Now, for the purpose of land navigation, we're not using longitude and latitude. If you find yourself lost in the woods and near a panic situation, do not expect to find yourself trying to call for search and rescue by calling in, hey, I'm at this degree, this minute, this second north, and this degree, this minute, that's second west. You're going to panic, you're going to brain freeze, and likely the people on the other end are not going to know what you're talking about. So for the purpose of like military land navigation, and the land navigation purposes that we're going to focus on, we're going to be using what's called the UTM grid reference system, or the Universal Transverse Mercator System. Okay, this is the 2-dimensional representation of our 3-dimensional world right here. Okay, this is effectively the northern hemisphere as it's divided up. Go back here and see what's going on up here. This is our hemisphere, northern hemisphere, divided up. Now, anytime you read a topographical map, you read that map to the right and up. You read topographical maps to the right and up. You read topographic maps to the right and up. In this case, we're reading our topographic map to the right, ending on the 16 series, and up, ending on the Sierra series, the 16 Sierra series grid coordinate. This is a 500,000 square meter piece of terrain on the surface. Here we have the 16 Sierra series of the UTM grid. That 16 Sierra series is further divided into 100,000 meter square grids. And those 100,000 meter square grids are further divided into 1 kilometer or 1,000 meter square grids. You see how things are, there's a method to this madness. And you can see here, hey, 500,000 meters wide up here, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, 50 equals 500,000. Down here, it's a little bit bigger because, hey, the earth is splayed like that. This is a detailed view of the UTM system as it covers our great land here in the beautiful United States. We're just talking about the 16 Sierra series grid square here. We're going to be focusing our time tonight over here in the 11 Sierra series, which we're all familiar with here in the great beautiful state of California, but specifically over here in the Kilo Bravo section. So see 11 Sierra, that big square, Kilo Bravo. So if we're in trouble out there in the woods and we have to contact Lieutenant Elliott and his posse to come out there and rescue us, and we start talking about, hey, I'm at 11 Sierra, Kilo Bravo, stuff's going to start clicking and they're going to be able to start focusing in on your location. And trust me, when we get to programming your GPS, this is all going to start making sense because your GPS is going to be barking this information at you so that you can figure out where you're at and communicate your location. Hunters, we love getting ourselves in trouble, right? With our spouses, our partners, our families, getting ourselves in trouble. Please picture this in your head. Focusing in, narrowing in on your location really can boil down to saving your life. Trust the method, trust your equipment, and you'll get out of these situations. So here we go. Beautiful El Capitan in Yosemite National Park. What we're looking at here is a standard USGS printed map, right? El Capitan quadrangle, all right, of the 7.5 minute series. Remember, 7.5 minute series is 1/8 of longitude, 1/8 of latitude. In lovely El Capitan, this map is surveyed and printed in 2018. I'm zoomed in here on this section, and you see what we're talking about. This grid square right here, 11 Sierra grid zone designation, Kilo Bravo, that 100,000 meters square. That is this representation right here. And if we look at the adjoining quadrangles, what do we have here? We have over number 3, Yosemite Falls. Down in number 5, Half Dome. Over here in number 7, I can't even read that because my eyes are getting bad. But you get the idea. You got 100,000 square meter blocks adjoining each other. These maps all have their own names. Now, what I do want you to notice here, for all of us podcast geeks who enjoy listening to folks talk about their adventures while we're grinding away for 40, 50, 60 plus hours a week, you listen to podcasts and they'll be talking about, hey, I hunted this section. I was up in Wyoming. I was hunting this section. I was hunting that section. What you see here on these red lines, these are not lines meant for you to navigate by. This is part of the township and range survey section. The Western United States is divided up to. Once we moved west of the Mississippi, land surveyors came out and started squaring up the West, surveying by township and range. I think 36 square miles is effectively one township. You look at most cities as incorporated, they're approximately 36 miles. Anyway, one of these red squares is 1 square mile on the surface, approximately. So you'll hear like Randy Newberg and folks saying, hey, I was out hunting this section. You can plan your hunts by surveying a section, conducting your map reconnaissance, conducting your map survey of specific sections, just to help you get a little bit better organized. But what we're going to be more worried about and concerned with are these little numbers right here, which is our square kilometers. And these lines are really faint on this map. So sometimes if you get one of these USGS maps, you have to take a straight edge, a yardstick, or a meter stick if, metric system, and physically put your lines across that. But a little bit more zoom in on would be our map datum right here. Important, you'll see North American datum of 1983. It gives you a good sense that, hey, this map has like some of the most recent datum contained in it. You'll find older maps out there at less reputable, smaller retailers. You have the World Geodetic System of 1984. Oh, you're going to be revisiting this a lot in your land nav career, so to speak. WGS 84, World Geodetic System 84. Plant that in your gray matter, right? You have other information that's contained in here when the imagery was placed, the other surveys that took place. Move my smiling face here. Right here, we're going to cover this a good bit. This is our grid to magnetic, magnetic to grid, are also known as our GM angle. Understand that for the purposes of land navigation, there are 3 norths that we deal with on a regular basis. There's true north here, our star, which is where Santa Claus lives, the North Pole. We have grid north, as we'll see on these maps, because we're talking about taking maps, making them square or rectangular, and then trying to cant them so that they are going towards the north as best they can. It doesn't exactly line up with true north, so they're a little bbit offset by a few degrees. And then there is magnetic north, which is where your compasses point. That needle is a positively charged needle, points toward the North Pole. Most people refer to it as the North Magnetic Pole. It's not, it's the South Magnetic Pole. It's a South Magnetic Pole because your compass needle is positively charged, opposites attract. It's pointing up there towards the South Magnetic Pole, which is on the north. Hopefully you can stump someone with that in trivia. But you'll also see here that we're revisiting our 11 Sierra Kilo Bravo grid zone designator. We've got more information about our 3 norths here. And most importantly, you're going to be looking at one of these maps. They say, move my smiling face here, which is going to fight with me, 1,000 meter grid UTM zone indicators. Those are those little hash marks on the side. We've got our scales here, both in kilometers and meters for our metric friends. And I make a lot of fun about using the metric system. I use it all the time in the field. That's how I count my paces out. That's how I measure distance. It becomes second nature. It's easy to adapt to. We've got our 1 in 24,000 scale, so you know which quadrant of the protractor you're going to be using. We've got contour interval, very important for you, for you hunters out there. And if you just want to go out and, I don't know, bird watch, contour interval of 40 feet. We're going to be revisiting that here in the coming slides, but please apply that to the gray matter. North American vertical datum of 1988. That means that was the last time that the USGS went out there and surveyed that terrain for its elevation and deflection. A lot changes in, going on 40 years. I'm sure things have changed somewhat, but again, that information is referenced there for you on the maps. We're going to be looking at Yosemite Falls here in a little bit, but again, you have a quadrangle that has its name. It's a 100,000 square meter quadrangle. In these maps, it shows you what part of the state in reference that map is that map is referencing. So you can focus in on where you're at. We've got our adjoining quadrangles names there. So if you want to build a master map, put on the wall, or tape these things together, you know what map titles to look for. It doesn't leave you lost. Again, a common item that you'll see on all these things, these legends, are road indicators, type of interstates, and more detailed maps, especially if you can get your hands on a military map or something that's printed by the Department of Defense map printing office. They've got more details in there, including like individual type structures and man-made objects and things like that. So different things are indicated on the map. I'm sure that there are a number of you out there rolling your eyes. It's like, look, man, I know that a red line on a map is a road, but for our friends out here who are joining us tonight, we're going to cover this for you. Red equals major roads. Blue equals water features such as rivers, lakes, springs, waterfalls. Green on a map, solid vegetation. A solid green is a forested area. Mottled greens indicates scrub vegetation. White, it depends. It leaves it up to the map makers and cartographers what they want to indicate that with. White with blue contour lines, that's a glacier or permanent snowfield. If you're hunting up in the tundra areas, Alaska, up in visiting our friends in Canada, or down in the Patagonias, kind of want to know that ahead of time when you're doing your map reconnaissance or your map survey before visiting an area. White with brown contour lines indicates an area without substantial forest. So you start looking at like Joshua Tree or desert arid areas. Brown equals contour lines, which indicates your elevation on maps. Purple, that's when map makers go in and make a major revision between one series or another. Black is your man-made features, and it shows you your buildings, mines, bridges, things like that. And if there's something else that they decide to throw in there, the map maker will include that in the map legend itself. So here we're looking at some examples of Yosemite Falls quadrangle maps that are printed over a number of years. We got 1994, 2017, 2019. These are all your 7.5 series maps. These are all 1 in 24,000th scale. They're using the same North American Datum 83 WGS, World Geodetic Survey from 1984. This is how your GPS speaks with the satellites and barks out numbers and locations to you in grid coordinates so you can plot your location on these maps. It's like the key, the master key right there. But what I need you to notice here is changing GM angle, changing grid to magnetic angle. 1994, we had a GM angle, combined GM angle of 16.34 degrees. 2017, 14.74. 2019, 13.90. What's going on here, right? Well, there is a molten ball of iron-rich liquid hot magma in the outer core of the Earth that floats up there around Hudson's Bay, or traditionally was around Hudson's Bay, Canada. And because it floats, because the Earth is round and is spinning and all that good stuff, centrifugal force, it's moving. And it has always moved. It's never sat still. And since 1994, that thing, for whatever reason, is accelerating and moving towards Russia. So 1994, this last survey, when this map was printed, it was here off the coast of the islands up there towards Canada. Since then, it has moved all the way up here, past waving at the North Pole, true north up there. No one can really explain why it's doing it. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there smart enough to explain it. I'm sure there are a few of you sitting in the audience right now who could sit down and give us a dissertation on what's going on. But what I need you to understand is you go to your local sporting goods store to purchase a topographic map of a particular quadrangle that you want to visit, scout, stalk, hunt in. I'm going to sell you one of these maps from 1994. I'm telling you that because they've done it to me. And if they'll do it to me, I mean, look at me. If they're willing to do this to me, they'll be willing to do this to you. So educate yourself right now. When you pick up a topographic map from a physical retailer, or even purchasing something from an online retailer or off of eBay, and when you get your hands on one of these maps, you've got to look at the year that it was printed. You've got to look at the GM angle, because this is how not only does your GPS talk to you and tell you how to plot your location on this map, but it tells you how to use your compass in order to shoot a bearing or an azimuth and be able to navigate from a known location where your GPS is telling you at to a location that you've plotted on your map, and not be off by meters, kilometer. Even going in the, I'm not saying going in the wrong direction, but hey, it happens. So there's a resource I'm going to show you about, talk to you about later on in the presentation, that'll let you check what the current GM angle is for your known location or the area that you're going to be traveling in, so that you've got updated datum. When you get that updated datum, you scratch out the old one on the map, you write the new one in there, you put the date that you put it in there, because if you decide to put that map in the old map drawer at home and decide to break it out 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, because hey, now I'm finally going to get that hunt of a lifetime, and you didn't update that, you're going to be regretting it when you get out into the field. So here we have an example of different scales of the same area, Yosemite Falls. Here we have a 1 in 50,000 scale map. Here we have a 1 in 24,000 scale map. You see they're generally covering the same little areas right here, but this is a zoomed in version of it. Here we have the UTM grids printed across the surface of this map. Here they're there, but they're a little bit faint. They're a little faint. You can see how if we look at our true north line here along the edge of the map, it goes straight up and down on this what would be an 8.5 by 11 printed map. And then we've got our grids here canted off at an angle. We were able to zoom in here. We'd see that our grid is off by about 1.5 degrees to the west. And then we've got our magnetic north that's off to 12.5 degrees to the east. You add those together to be able to do your grid to magnetic to grid conversion. This map is off by about 14 degrees. But again, I want you to notice the difference between this 2003 printed map and this 2011. We've got 17 degrees from the center of this map in 2011 and about 14 degrees in 2023. So your grid to magnetic angle is variable regardless of where you are on the surface of the earth at any given time. It's always changing. You need to check that information just like you would check the weather. Getting into it, contour lines. First thing we're going to talk about tonight. Contour lines are the most common method of showing relief and elevation on a standard topographic map. The contour line represents an imaginary line on the ground above or below sea level. Contour lines, every fifth index line on topographic map. The darker lines are considered the index lines. I spoke there. Every fifth line is the index line. It'll be indicated with an elevation printed on it. The lighter lines in between there are between the index lines. There's typically 4 of them. They indicate the elevation relief between the index lines. They will have supplemental contour lines on maps that are of flatter terrain. Think of like deserts and basins, large basin areas where there isn't much, that change in 40 feet of elevation change can occur over several kilometers. They'll have little index lines broken up with a dotted line between there. But real quick before I bust into the next slide, LT, do you have any recurring questions that people have had a chance to ask about to touch on before I jump to the next slide?
No, brother. I think we're set.
Cool.
Go ahead.
So here is a zoomed in example of what you'll see on a topographic map. Here's our iconic half dome. You'll see here a dark brown line. This is one of our index lines, 6,600 feet in elevation. Let me move my smiling face here. 66, 68, 70, 72, 74, 76, 7,800 feet. Make sense? See what we're doing here? 66, 68. Count it out between. In between here, 40-foot contour lines, 6640, 6680, 6920. So on, so on. Does it make sense what we're doing there? So method to this. We see that as these contour lines are spread out between the index lines, the more spread out they are, the more flat and level that area is. I can tell you that this is still pretty steep and I wouldn't want to be going up the side of it. The closer you get, the closer you see these index lines, the greater the greater the degree of slope is. This is the cliff. Everyone can picture Half Dome in their mind's eye. This is the rock face of it. This is, hey, you fall, you're not coming back from that. You can see the trail that goes up the back of it, the switchbacks going up the back of it. This is critical so that when you find yourself picking up one of these topographic maps and you've picked out a section of that map that you want to go physically visit and scout or hunt, and you're going to do your map reconnaissance, your map survey, and you start looking at terrain, get an idea, hey, one, do I have the fitness level to be able to safely move over this terrain, or just identify the general hazards I can expect to encounter when out there in the terrain, so I can do a more appropriate risk assessment for myself and make plans to communicate with EMS or my loved ones, let them know that I'm safe. You got to be able to look at this and be able to recognize the hazards right off the bat. If I'm going into a mountainous area to hunt and I see things like this, and areas like that, and especially spots like this, I need to make sure I need to make sure that I'm not moving through this area in the dark, for one. And I'm telling you, just from like personal experience here, like being up in Montana and Colorado's and Wyoming, you'll see on topographic maps, again, USGS is not out there surveying these places every single year, right? Some of the stuff is they haven't put eyes on or survey on in decades. And you'll be walking along, you think, hey, this isn't that bad. I mean, this isn't a bad slope. I can manage that. And it is like this at the end of the day. Or you're walking along, you just see a gentle like spur here, and it's actually a cliff face. And I have broken through brush thinking that, hey, this is just going to continue on like up like this, and it's going to be a nice gentle grade. And next thing you know, boop, 60 feet straight down in front of me. You know, be aware of this. Again, big things to take away from this slide. The darker lines are the index lines. They're generally indicated with an elevation on the line. You can do the math and add it up in between the index lines that are indicated here. And you can do the math with relation to what the interval contour intervals are, because hey, they'll list this on a good topographic map. Again, understand the closer to these index lines, the more dangerous the terrain are. We're going to move into identifying key terrain features. Good stuff, right? Move this. Don't fight with me. There we go. Number one, we've got a hill. Looks like a fried egg, right? Number two, we've got a valley, a low area. Three, we've got a ridge right here. Four, we've got saddles. See here, we got a hill, we got a hill, we got a hill, we got saddles in between these hills. Saddles are key terrain features when you're scouting out a particular area. Mammals are lazy just like us. They want to find and move along terrain that offers the least amount of resistance. Saddles offer means of passing between large terrain features such as hills with the minimum amount of energy that they have to expend. And you see how we've got a saddle here that comes off of this number 6, a draw. We've got this hard black line right there. That's a river, a water feature. These dotted lines you'll see on maps are intermittent water features, like seasonal streams or streams that only pick up whenever they've got a good waterfall. Come back to this. Number 5 is a depression. You'll see these in mining areas. You expect to see, if you see that on a map, that hey, it's going to be like a marshy or swamp area, or just general hazard. Don't go wandering into that in the dark. In fact, if you see something like that in the daytime, proceed with caution. In fact, avoid it if you can. We've got number 7, spurs that come off of these terrain features, and they sit in between draws here. Number 8, not the best representation, but you see how these contour lines come together, just like we were talking about with halftone. Hey, number 8 is a cliff. Number 9 and 10, cuts and fills. So here we have what is a railroad. This little broken black line. We've got these areas that are marked here. This is a rail line. We've got this terrain feature, or this key feature right here. It's a bridge. But anyway, number 9, we've got fill. So when engineers come through and they come into an area that offers a gap, like, hey, this draw, and they need to build a road or a railroad over it, they'll fill it in with boulders and earth in order to rail over it. And then we've got our cuts, number 9. So when they come along a hillside, and you'll see this on the freeways all over the West, I'll just blow right through and cut through that area. You want to be able to identify these things on maps. so that, hey, if you're out scouting in an area and you get yourself in trouble, one of the things we're talking about is what's called a panic azimuth, so that you know that, hey, you've hit that level, you are freaking out. All right. And say this map's oriented to the north. And if I tell myself all I have to do is point my compass to 90 degrees due east and walk, I will hit this rail line or I will hit this road. You want to know that that feature is there so that you can walk yourself out of a dangerous situation. Or like Hugh Glass, and drag yourself out of a situation, hit that rail line, and be able to navigate north or south to a point of safety. So bear with me here while I slide this over. One of the ways that you can practice this stuff at home is you take your fist, and we have every terrain feature that we just encountered there on our fist and within our palm. All right, we've got our hills right here, right? We've got our saddles right here in between. We've got our valleys here. We've got our depression here in the middle. We've got our ridge lines that cover across the tops of our knuckles. We got, again, our saddles, if I didn't already cover that, between our hills. We've got draws that run up between our fingers. We got spurs that run down our fingers, and we got a cliff whoop, right here down the side. So when you really want to sit back and say, what was that dude talking about in that seminar I signed up for? You just point this thing whichever direction you want to do, and you can refresh yourself with our key terrain features. Now a little bit more in depth on terrain features. So our hills, all right, they look like fried eggs. Okay, here's a hill in our nice little wood block print feature. You'll see our contour lines to indicate relief and elevation here. We've got our valleys, which lie between hill areas. Again, we talked about this solid line like this. Again, black and white are in color. This is a continuous running stream. 12 months out of the year, you can expect to find water in there, according to the map maker and cartographer. Again, things change. Here we have what indicates an intermittent water source, intermittent stream. Here we have a couple hills. Again, got our saddle right there, valley. Here we have a ridge going up the back of this hill here. Here we have a ridge line connecting multiple hills. Ridge line. We got 1, 2, 3 hilltops. 1, 2, 3 hilltops. Got right here a draw. Got spurs coming down off of this. Yes, I know I'm going fast. But please. Here we
And
have a
just
saddle.
on that note, Andrew, yeah, there's been some folks on the chat. They're like, I hope we
Please.
can get this recorded, and I'll have to watch it a few times. And I think you were saying before in the practice that you would be willing to give these slides out, correct?
Yep. Yeah. There. You'll see my email address popping up again. I'm happy to send you a copy of this presentation, as well as a copy of the source materials that a lot of these cutouts are this imagery is taken from. Again, this is quick and dirty exposing you to these things because, again, I'm exposing you to it. Pieces are going to come together. We'll go in further in detail, and there are going to be a lot more training opportunities that the state is working on to put together for the team here. Again, saddle in between 2 hills here. Again, if you look at this, it's a low-lying area between 2 hills. You're out in your glasses. You got those big, powerful 15 power binoculars. You're glassing up in these wilderness areas. You're going to see game trails left and right, going splitting up and down in between these saddles, except for those stubborn billy goats, which will just walk over the top of these hills because they don't know any better. Depressions, again, this is what you'd expect to see on a topographic map and what you'd see in person. Draws, again, going up between hills. Oftentimes you have those intermittent or permanent water features, such an intermittent stream. Spurs coming off of hills, draws going up in between. You'll see it on a map similar to this on those with those contour index lines. Cliffs, identifying this life-taking hazard on a topographic map. You'll see these contour lines come together. Or like with Half Dome, those dark contour lines just sandwiched together, hundreds of them. And that line will come together and it'll come off with like little hairs like that. So won't be quite as steep as Half Dome, but you know, you're going to be able to bounce off of things on your way down. But you want to be able to identify this if you're planning to move through a particular piece of terrain on one of your scouting expeditions. Identify that hazard ahead of time. Work to avoid it, or at least be aware that it's there. You'll also see cliff features illustrated on a map. The contour lines come together and then it just shears off like this. You got these little hairs coming off like eyelashes. You can see that the cliff isn't quite so steep as this, where it's just a dead fall drop off. I'm telling you, you will find yourself slowly, methodically moving through the elk woods or after mule deer. You're going to come upon something that looks like that's like this in front of you, which will look more like this on the map, but it will be just that steep. Do yourself a favor, mark that hazard on the map based on using the tools that we're going to discuss here in a little bit, and make that a known hazard for your purposes. You're going to be back hunting that area again in the future. Again, cliff, danger, broken femur, broken neck, death. Cuts and fills again. Hey, we got a railroad here. You see the boulders that the engineers put in there? That's the fill, so they can level out the terrain to lay the track. Here we've got cuts where the engineers went. They blasted through the hillside in order to lay track and level out the ground for an even grade and climb. Different types of slopes. You just need to be familiar with this, because again, you need to make sure that you have your fitness level as a hunter matches the terrain that you're going to be moving through. You've got these contour lines that are further apart and they bulge down like that. That's a gentle downward slope. Again, hey, we got a road feature right here. We got a bridge. Look at this. We got a little bridge. We got a road. Steep slopes. See how the contour lines are coming down together. Look at this. We got that fried egg right there. It's a hill. We got a hill right here. We got some boxes, some little black boxes. We've got houses, buildings, man-made features. Concave slopes. Again, road right here. Black box, man-made feature. Concave slopes. See how the slopes are, the contour lines are bulging away from the road there. Convex slopes. Okay, none of this is going to be on the test, but again, be aware when you're looking at it and when you're referring back to these slides and looking at topographic maps yourself. Convex slopes bulging out, going downhill. They're steep. It's steep. These lines are close together. You've got a road right here, switchback, road, switchback in front of you. And now to start putting the stuff together. Again, I realize fast and furious. You make your way out to a known point, which you're going to glass from into a desired area, basin, some rolling hills and terrain. You decide, hey, this is where I'm going to set up, move through the terrain at dark, be up there before sunrise, got my big spotting scope out. I'm going to look out to this direction to the west with the sunrise behind me to the from the east. And I've got all this terrain in front of me. I've got a permanent river that's flowing through here. I've got intermittent water sources, streams here. I've got spurs. I've got another hill over there. I'm going to look at all of this. You as a hunter, when you're paying for one of those e-scouting courses, or you just dropped a pretty penny on getting some great topographic maps, need to realize that, hey, I've got a number of contour lines and things going on here, and recognize that this is, again, a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional space, varying terrain, and not just elevation and deflection and drop and fall in terrain, but you're going to have trees and brush and shrubs and all other sorts of things that will obstruct your view. And you know, you're sitting here with your spotting scope and you're glassing out towards this hilltop, hoping that you're going to be able to visually cover all this terrain in front of you. Well, I'm here to tell you that there's going to be a significant amount of dead space between you and your known observation point, this point that you're referencing out here to observe into. especially since we're hunters. We're using what you call affectionately in the military direct fire weapons. That means line of sight, be it your rifle, your shotgun, or your bow. We're not dropping artillery, lobbing rounds, shells onto the other side of this hillside over here. Line of sight, what we can see, what we can identify in front of us, and ensure that the target is what we intend to shoot before we release that arrow or pull the trigger. You need to be able to employ your weapon in an area of terrain that you know that you can look into, because hey, what we're illustrating here is you're up here on this hilltop and you've got all this space, dead space between you and your known observation point or your known reference point that you're observing into. And we have rifles and bows, and be this like 20 feet or 40 feet in elevation change, and this being just a stream bed or a mountainous terrain where we're talking about hundreds of feet worth of elevation change. You need to understand that there's a lot of this terrain here that you're not going to be able to see. And there can be all kinds of critter activity that is going on in front of you that you're just completely blind to, let alone being able to safely release an arrow or fire your weapon at a positively identified target. So we're looking here at our known glassing point. H, I, and J. Can we see anything down there? Nope, it's a blind spot. E and F. No, you can't see anything there. B and C. No, you can't see. You can't see anything that's really going on in anywhere in here, except near the higher points of elevation. So there are software tools, mapping tools available out there that you can play with and find, whether they're free or something that you have to pay for, that will identify dead space in front of you. I can tell you, if you've decided to invest the time, take time off, pay your $5 gallon gas to cruise out of town and walk to this point where you e-scout and glass into, and next thing you know, you can't see anything in front of you that you expected. You need to be prepared to pull up tripod and relocate to another point, maybe right here, that you can glass down into these intermittent water sources where you have a clear line of view, or just reposition yourself along this north-south axis so you can glass into. Be prepared to adjust. And if you had taken the time, if you take the time to map recon, map survey a particular section or grid square that you're going to be operating in, you will be prepared to make those adjustments when you have, eyes on target. And I was like, I can't see the target. And you realize you need to move, and not just move from point A to, your contingent point B, C, D, but be able to move safely across that terrain, not break your femur, not slip on a log and have a groin injury, not get lost, and continue to make that trip, be it a scouting trip or a hunting trip, successful for yourself. What I like to call the Fab Five of online map resources: the U.S. Geologic Map Database, United States, USNG, United States National Grid Coordinate Viewer. Good stuff. CalTopo, I don't know if you're familiar with this yet. It's a freemium resource. That 1 in 50,000 scale map of Yosemite Falls that I showed you earlier. It's a free map that I printed from here. My Topo, it's a map, custom topographic map printing resource, as well as they sell those quadrangles pre-printed. They'll stuff them in the mail, send them to you in good old Google Earth. Click that link. It opened up to the National Geologic Map Database. Can everyone see that? LT, can you see my screen now?
Got it.
Outstanding. I'm going to click on Topo View. View and download maps now. Check this out. Okay. It's loading. Let's go look at Half Dome. Half Dome, California. Click on that. We've got every USGS topographic map of this area printed all the way back to 1897. I'm going to click on the common reference scales that we're talking about earlier, 1 in 24 thousandths. We've got a map that was surveyed and printed in 2021. I click on that. Downloads. Open. Can everyone still see my screen?
Yes.
Look at this. Print it entirely for free. All right. You can zoom in on this. It's got the legend that we reviewed earlier. Completely free resource. You can poke around on this. The entire United States is mapped and available at your fingertips. You can take this map and you can send it to your local map printer and they will print and produce this for you. There are some things that you're going to want to work on, like to customize this at the end of the day to make sure you're on the field again. If you look here, you see these numbers right here. These are our UTM grid coordinate numbers. Very faintly here, you'll see these contour, these UTM grid lines across here. You're going to want to take your mechanical pencil with a straight edge and tighten that up. But this is a free resource that's available to all of you. All right, this is CalTopo, another freemium resource that we're going to click on here. Do you see CalTopo in front of you, or do you still have the presentation?
I got CalTopo.
CalTopo, outstanding. All right, here we got our buddies in the CHP flying around here in the Eastern Sierras. Accept use. I'm going to start mapping. This is so easy to use. All right. So my search screen is covered by Zoom. Bear with me. Boom. Here we go. No, don't you do that to me. Half Dome, California. Nope, nope. I'm going to go with scanned. Let's see here. Forest Service doesn't work because it's the national park. Scan topos. This popping up right here in front of me. Cancel that. I've got Half Dome right here in front of me. Okay. Premium resource. This stuff is available at your fingertips. I didn't have to log into anything. I just clicked on the URL, which you will have available to you should you request a copy of this presentation. Check this out. I go to print. This grid, print square pulls up in front of me. LT, can you see that red square in front of me on my screen?
No, not yet. Got it now.
Got it now? Outstanding.
Yep.
These are the print options that you have to print a topographic map at home or at FedEx Kinko's. You can play with the Geospatial PDF or JPEG if you so desire. Page size. On the free size, you really only have a choice between 8.5, 11 or A4 standard print size. Scale. This says not fixed. Here, go back to what we've been talking about. We're going to want to pick a scale, either 1 in 24 thousandths, 1 in 50 thousandths, something that matches the protractor, or preferably that you use on a consistent basis that you're familiar with. So if you hit that panic mode where your brain starts to vapor lock, you're using the same scale size you're familiar with. Here, we're going to select 1 24 thousandths. I'm going to center on a Half Dome. DPI, it only allows you to print 200 dots per inch on the freemium side. Grid lines, select grid lines. We're going to select USNG, United States National Grid. We're going to select 1 kilometer squares. Don't worry about putting in longitude and latitude. You see the datum here? You can play around with your datum if you want to, but you're not going to like the outcome. Go with datum UGS 84 to ensure consistency. And then all we have to do is hit generate PDF. I'm sorry, generate JPEG. And there's our map. Look at this. Remember we talked earlier, 11 Sierra Kilo Bravo. There's our the section of this map exists within that 100,000 square meter section, 11 Sierra Kilo Bravo. It tells us our GM angle right here, 12.5 minutes off of true north to the east, and grid is 1.6 degrees off to the west. See how that is kind of looks like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And we've got our grid square, as you were our scale, 1 in 24 thousandths. You can take this, take it with you to FedEx Kinko's. You can get some waterproof paper from your preferred online or office retailer, have them print these up for you and put them in your map case. I keep my map case tied to my bino harness, my map case in between my binocular case itself and my chest, so it's always there tied to my body. And just real quick, I carry a couple different GPSs on me, including a little a wearable GPS that I keep tied into my bino harness right here by my chest as well. So that's
So
right
question,
there available for you. Please,
Andrew,
sir.
about, can you convert these maps instead of meters to feet?
Yes, you can. However, what you need to be aware of as the UTM grid
Yeah,
system is all based on metric.
yeah,
And it's like with anything, more you do it, the more it'll become familiar to you in second nature. So again, 500 square meter big blocks, 100,000 meter medium blocks, 1,000 meter smaller blocks. It's
got
the
it.
way they have that plugged in. But yes, you can convert the stuff into feet in order to have some more familiarity.
Yes.
Excellent. My topo, just real quick, I'm going to click on that. This is one of those sources that you can purchase from. Bear with me. I want to make sure that you have this in front of you. I'm starting to figure this out. Do you see my screen in front of you with says my topo printed maps? Excellent. So you can print maps, US topo maps, California, and then all these maps are available for you via their catalog. We can do a search right here. And we've got the maps that we've just been looking at right here in front of us. Now, they're going to be in different sections. They're going to look a little bit different, but you can go through and pick what you prefer, including something with a little bit less green, if you prefer. Well, you choose, like the big BK, you made your way. Beware, you click on this, they're going to come in different sizes at times. Again, we've got different map dates. These map dates have different GM angles associated with it. You can order custom maps from here as well. Close that because it's warning us. Come on. As you were. That's actually what I wanted. I apologize about that. My wife hates looking over my shoulder when I'm doing this sort of thing. All right. So here we can customize the map that we want, USGS topographic or something with enhanced relief and shading. Just go with the basic. For your own sake, you can select different scale sizes depending on what you prefer, which protractor you have, military protractor or one of these universal protractors. Again, you just get the 1 in 24 thousandths. You don't have to worry about this longitude and latitude stuff. You can put your name on it. If you're buying it as a gift, you can put someone else's name on it if you want to. Map grids, yes. You want the full, well, on longitude and latitude, don't put the longitude and latitude on there. If you're in a panic situation, you're brain freezing, you just want to have your USGS or your UTM grid lines all across the full size and scale of the map. And then you'll be able to decide whether you want it in portrait or landscape, how big you want it. Like, hey, do you want it covering your entire wall, or do you just want something like 1824 that you can fold up? And then they'll fold it for you, roll it for you, whichever you prefer. And at the end of the day, it'll give you something that you can print or purchase. See how quick it is? It's not responding fast enough for my taste. We're going to close out of that. We're going to carry on with the presentation. LT, any big questions popping up within the chat, repeating, like saying, hey,
Yeah,
so
one question, a good
please.
question came in about, can you put these, like download these maps and then put them on a GPS device, like say like a Garmin Rhino?
That I don't have the answer to, because I don't have the familiarity with
Yeah.
the operating system that Garmin uses. What I can tell you is that Garmin's getting their base data for the topographic
Yeah.
maps that they're displaying from the USGS, from the free resources I just showed you. There are some, I believe, KML files that you can add to Google Earth, and you can probably add to your GPS, but like the Garmin Rhino. But we're going to get into GPSs and the potential hazards of relying solely on GPS. What I'm going to encourage you to do, and what I do myself when I'm being a responsible HEI, responsible adult, I've had to do a lot of growing up in life, and it's like, hey, the bar's high, responsibility of my partner, my family, all that. I keep a physical copy of the map of the area that I am in my map case on my chest, because electronic devices fail. And we have been relying on paper maps to navigate the surface of the earth since we've been able to put one and one together to make two. So what do they say? One is none and two is one, right? Have a GPS, have two, have three. My phone with GPS, my satellite communicator with a GPS, and another wearable GPS that stays to my body. So if I fall off that cliff, that thing is still attached to what's left of me when I get to the bottom. Again, moving on to compass basics here, and let's check the time. Doing pretty good. We're going to be covering the different types of compasses. We're going to talk about, again, and review magnetic declination. When we get to magnetic declination, you're going to see something you're going to be like, what is this? Just exposing you to it. That's all we're doing here. We're not expecting you to grasp these things on any way, any level or degree of being functional. Just see it, recognize it. When you start educating yourself, the pieces will gel and come together. Using a compass and a map together, and taking a bearing with a compass. So we got a couple compasses in front of you, ones that you will commonly encounter. This is a type an engineering compass. It's commonly used by artillerymen for either shooting a precise bearing in order to direct your fires in your guns, and by land surveyors just to go out and plot your property boundaries. It's a good instrument. Common compasses you're going to encounter is your simple base plate compass. Everyone, when you're in the field, should have one of these on your person. I keep one of these simple base plates compasses open and exposed in my map case on my chest. So whenever I need to take out my map case, lay out my map in front of me real quick to orient my map with the terrain I see in front of me, so I can be able to identify any hidden hazards behind the tree and the terrain that in front of me. I have that compass, boom, right there in the map case. I can do a quick twist and orientation and be able to continue to cover terrain safely, smartly. Base plate compasses, simple, inexpensive. Just about any reputable brand will do. Buy what you can afford, keep it with you, use it. Mirror compasses, use them in a lot of ways, like what we're going to cover, a lensatic compass, but mirror compasses. You fold this mirror up over the base plate, and you can shoot an accurate bearing or azimuth in order to navigate. They have phospholuminescent paint in there, so it will glow in the dark for you. Understand that these compasses are made for different hemispheres and different uses. This is a USGS compass. It's intended only for use in the Northern Hemisphere. Again, this is a positively magnetized needle. It's pointing towards the North Pole in the Northern Hemisphere, which is the South magnetic pole, because again, opposites attract. And if you try to take this to Australia or South Africa, this needle will, instead of be pointing on a gentle slope towards the North magnetic pole, will be pointing down, because hey, it's like a divining rod going towards the other side of the hemisphere. They don't function the way they're intended to. This is a global version of a mirror compass. That bezel housing, let me turn my laser pointer back on here, make me feel a little bit important. Got my laser pointer back up. This bezel, this housing right here, it's elevated, it's a little bit higher. These needles have more freedom to float up and down so that they won't bind against the base and be able to point towards the Northern Hemisphere. We have the good old trusty military style lensatic compass. These things are great. They're worth your weight. Do I always carry this particular model in the field? I don't. When I'm teaching one of my classes, absolutely I do. They are, you can throw them, you can beat them, you can abuse them, run them over with a tank. They take a licking and keep on ticking. Many of these models have tritium components, which put off a nice big bright glowing glow in the dark effect. There are, if you expect to like take one of these and go to Mount Everest or travel and traverse around the world, understand that there are other countries out there that have customs import export restrictions on radioactive material. These things are radioactive. You can't just throw them in the trash when you're done with it, and they won't let you import this. Japan in particular won't let you travel in or out of their country with that much tritium on one of your persons. They have the phospholuminescent type, which you can get in and out and across all the borders. So it glow as bright as these things, which can be blinding? No, but it will do the job. But here we've got our sight line. We've got our north pointing arrow, our east and west. Our degrees are here in the middle in red. 360 degrees around the Earth, 360 degrees make a circle. These black lines that you'll see on some of these engineering and military type compasses, those are mills. You don't need to know about that now. It's just a more precise way of navigating. It's used for artillery and indirect fires. You got your sighting lens. These things, spend a little bit of money if you want to, if you can afford it. They're great instruments, tools to have. Types of backup compasses. You got your thumb compasses, things that you see in like in the Rambo survival knife that fit in there. You've got little wearable compasses that you can put on your watch, extra little types that you can just throw on your wrist. These are great to have, especially if you're in a panic situation like we talked about earlier, where you set your panic azimuth because you know that there is a railroad or a main highway a couple kilometers or miles off in the distance. All you have to do is point that thing in a particular direction, and then off you go. Great general direction, big picture sort of thing. Don't rely on it for any sort of precision land navigation. Something to keep in mind, right? When they program us in the military to use our compasses, you need to understand that these north pointing arrows, it's all magnetized, and in electric fields, electromagnetic fields, pieces of metal, they affect these instruments and affect its ability to function and align with the magnetic north. If you're near power lines and you're out in the woods and there's like a major transmission line overhead, and you've been walking along these cuts and these major transmission lines hunting, those transmission lines will throw off the magnetic field that's generated by these things, will throw off the functioning of your compass. If you are like truck hunting and you decide, hey, I'm going to bubble up and get in the bed of my pickup truck and shoot an azimuth, that truck is interfering with the magnetic field and the functioning of your compass. You have a rifle or your firearm slung across your chest, so a big, dirty, hairy 44 Magnum, because, grizzly bears, and you're shooting your azimuth, it's going to affect your azimuth. Military recommends that if you are a mounted war fighter, that if you're going to use your compass to shoot a bearing, that you like dismount and like move like 20 to 30 meters away from that piece of armor in order to take an accurate azimuth. Like, you leave your weapon behind, you keep the metal off you. So if you've got crazy amounts of metal on you, or a plate in your head, just be aware. All those things affect the accuracy and the ability of these instruments to perform and do their job. So try to reduce the effects of this. You're going to see here later on here where I've got some close-ups of the compass for illustrating like bearing purposes, for shooting a bearing or shooting an azimuth. And I had to have my iPhone way up here like this and zoomed in on the compass face itself in order to maintain an azimuth and get an image. So as soon as I move that iPhone towards that compass, because of the magnetization that's in the iPhone, that thing was jumping all over the place. Be aware. Grid to magnetic angle. Again, 3 norths, right? We got true north, North Pole, Santa Claus lives. We got magnetic north, which is that big ball of iron-rich liquid hot magma moving in the outer core of the Earth, the ever-changing magnetic field on the surface of the Earth. And then we got grid north, where the cartographers take that UTM grid system, they lay it over the top of the map so that you, in turn, can use your protractors and take the grid coordinates that your GPS is barking out at you and point your plot and your location on the map. Again, this is all available to you should you request a copy of this. Take this, print a copy of the slide, keep it in your map case, keep it in a Ziploc bag, keep it on your person. I've been doing this for 20 years more. I still refer back to this all the ever loving time to make sure that, all the brain fog I have, the stress at work, the stress of being in the woods, making sure I'm safely navigating across terrain, that the oxygen deprivation that I'm dealing with due to altitude or just being out of shape, the weight on me, that I'm thinking clearly, that I'm adding and subtracting things clearly. Reference this stuff. It's an aid. Don't be embarrassed not to use it. Couple of hand-holding techniques for using your compass. And I have these slides in here for a reason, because when you get to some of the YouTube resources out there that I have available to you, you have people shooting azimuths like this, like they're on the range, like they've got their 9mm and they're clicking away. I don't know who. Don't do this to shoot an azimuth. All right, 2 techniques. I can understand if, a little bit of criticism of some techniques you're going to see out there. Don't hold a compass like this to shoot an azimuth. You got a plate in your head and it messes with your compass. I can understand that. Adapt and overcome. But for the sake of the instruction that we're going to give here, hold a compass like navel level, out like this, away from the belt, so it's not the belt buckle or anything you have metallic you have around your waist isn't interfering with the functioning of the instrument. Hold it navel level. Hold it just like that, fingers pointing straight ahead. Hey, the chippies pull you over. They decide they want you to touch the end of your finger, the tip of your nose. It's a very innate way. Hey, you can point that compass from your navel, look down, look up, look down, look up. You can shift your body and know generally where your body is in orientation with the compass and where you're pointing. Then there's the cheek weld method, which I prefer for taking an accurate azimuth bearing. I keep using these interchangeable terms because you're going to encounter people out there who are going to give you instruction that, hey, I know this. I know what this person's talking about here. So we have the cheek weld method, where he's using a military style and static compass. He's viewing through the sight lens. You got the notch here, just like in the back of a pistola or your open sight rifle. You've got your sighting wire. He's looking off at the smokestack. He's got a little magnifier right here that he's viewing through onto the plate of this compass, and it gives him a reading of 320 degrees to the north. Real quick, we talked earlier about those. I love this compass, but one of the reasons why I don't carry it in the field is it doesn't have a reflective surface. And so hunters, bird watchers, folks who are going to be out there in the field, I really like the mirror compasses, because it provides you a signaling surface. So you break your femur, break your leg, you get lost, you panic, and you have to call Lieutenant Elliott to come out there with the posse and the sheriff flying overhead. You've got a means to signal for help. A little bit of digression. Listen, quick and dirty, right? But in order to put these things together, like, hey, you need to be able to take your compass, put it on the map, and then orient your map with the terrain in front of you, so that you can look at, have a good flat two-dimensional representation of the three-dimensional space out in front of you. So you get to your glassing point, like we looked earlier, and we were discussing dead space, and you need to break out your topographic map so that you can look out the terrain in front of you. You even go so far as to do a sketch, your range card, rabbit hole. But you need to be able to take your compass, place your compass on the surface of that map, look at the grid to magnetic angle. This thing was printed in 1970. It's an old piece of clip art here. And take that compass and map and just turn it together. I've got my straight edge right here of the compass. It's going on that north-south UTM grid line right there. Take that map, and I just have to turn it 10 degrees. 10 degrees, so that needle is pointing off 10 degrees with magnetic north, and that straight line is matching the grid north. More examples to come, but that will orient the map so that the terrain in front of me on that map and the two-dimensional representation of that topographic map is laid out in front of me to accurately represent the three-dimensional space that I'm looking into. LT, any questions popping up on that?
No.
Excellent. I knew you guys are going to get it. It's like I saw when I saw the folks who were registering for this class, I was like, these are some people who have their act together, and I'm proud of you, every one of you. Convert the magnetic azimuth to a grid azimuth. Math, simple, basic math. I'm like, okay, so I understand. You're told when you signed up for this that there would be no math. There's math, basic math involved here. Now understand that rabbit holes, right? There is a line of departure that runs north-south through the continental United States, where on the eastern seaboard, that magnetic north is going to be pushing out to the west. On the eastern side, just think like east of the Mississippi, that magnetic line is going to be pointing back to the east. Where you are on the continental United States or anywhere in the world for that fact will determine whether or not you're adding or subtracting between converting a magnetic azimuth to a grid azimuth and grid azimuth back to a magnetic azimuth. As an example here, based on the direction this thing's pointing, the eastern side of the United States, we got a grid north, and the magnetic north is pointing off 8 degrees to the west. We're going to convert a magnetic azimuth to a grid azimuth. Don't freak out on me yet. It's going to make sense in the next slides. But we take our magnetic azimuth, we subtract 8 degrees that 8-degree change in angle, and we end up with a grid azimuth of 57 degrees. Stay with me. Again, an example of converting a magnetic azimuth to a grid azimuth. I'm sitting up here on Mount Kingstar with my big old 15 power binoculars, and I'm glassing off in the distance, and I see a monster buck like this, like this, like this, like this. Okay. I see a monster buck off at the distance, right? I grab my compass, I do a cheek weld. I'm gonna get a bearing on that monster buck so I can plot that buck's location on my topographic map so I can plan a path of approach, a safe path of approach to have some success on the objective. Weld my compass to my face. I end up with a magnetic azimuth of 5 degrees to the north. I have a GM angle of 12 degrees. Again, eastern side of the United States. I need to subtract my GM angle from my magnetic azimuth, which gives me a grid azimuth of 353 degrees to the north. I put my protractor, remember we talked about these things earlier, this clear piece of plastic, on my known location, my glassing point on Mount Kingstar. I have my protractor generally oriented due north, 0 degrees. Comes with straight edges, line this thing up with straight edges. It comes with crosses right here in the middle of the protractor, line it up. If I didn't do this conversion and I just took my straight edge ruler and I put 5 degrees to the north, right here, there's my 5. This would tell me I have to walk towards this hilltop over here in front of me in order to find my monster buck. He's not on this hilltop. He's over here in this clearing area. And by doing my conversion from a magnetic to a grid, I can take my straight edge, 353 degrees, take my straight edge right here, 350, see, 340, 345, 350, 1, 2, 3, 353 degrees, 355, 353 degrees, and draw a line so I know on my topographic map the direction that this buck is feeding or bedding down into. These laser range finders now, they shoot out, 1,500, 2,000 meters. Number of times, glass up a nice big buck that's bedded down. I shoot my azimuth. I do my conversion. I get my polar plot. That's the straight line direction off into infinity that I see this buck. I take my rangefinder. I dink, 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 get a couple ranges on him. Comes back 1,450 meters. I get my straight edge out compared to the scale on my map. I take it, I plot it on the map here, and man, I know exactly where that buck is on this topographic map to within a matter of a couple meters. I've used this technique in the field, utilizing both my online resources with my my iPod here, in conjunction with my folded topographic maps, and I've killed bucks using this technique to get myself on the objective within a shooting distance, to safely move across the terrain that I scout out of the map and have success on the objective. Oops, I jumped too quick. Again, convert a grid azimuth to a magnetic azimuth. Now, you need to be able to take your azimuth that you shoot from your cheek weld and put it on a map. What if you need to do it from a map to a compass? Here we navigate it to a known point A. Our GPS said go here. We get there. Our GPS is barking at us. B is a cache of supplies that we dropped late summer, early fall, prior to hunting season on one of our scouting trips. And we now need to travel overland to get to our cache so we can set up camp and hunt in this wilderness area all out here, right? We walk to our known point here and we take out our protractor. We've got our known point marked here on the map, B, our cache point. I put my protractor on the known point. I take my straight edge, I measure between the two of them, and on my scale of the protractor, it gives me 93 degrees to the west. Now, as you were, 93 degrees to the east. Now, I cannot pick up my compass and then shoot an azimuth or take and hold it by my belly button and walk 93 degrees to the east and think I'm going to hit my cache point. I won't hit it. I'll miss it. Because again, we have to be able to take this map, two-dimensional representation of our three-dimensional world. I think that's going to be the title of my autobiography. Take that and convert it into a means that this compass, which is detecting a magnetic sphere on our three-dimensional sphere, and be able to walk in the appropriate direction. So gives us a grid azimuth of 93 degrees to the east. In this case, we've got a GM angle of 14 degrees. I add the GM angle back to the grid azimuth, gives me a magnetic azimuth of 107 degrees. I then pick up my compass, I put it to my cheek, I put it by my belly button, I get my magnetic azimuth of 107 degrees, and that is the direction I start walking. LT, any questions popping up on that, or are people like freaking out?
No, no questions, but we do need to speed up a little bit.
Oh, yeah, we do. Back azimuth. You're going to walk off in one direction here. You need to be able to get back to where you're going. You drop your pack at a location, you walk off at 115 degrees to go get that monster buck. You either are going to have success in the objective and get that buck, or you're going to be brokenhearted and need to go back to your pack. If you're going 115 degrees on an azimuth, you need to know the 180 degree opposite so you can turn around, shoot that azimuth going back, and walk back to your pack or your known starting point. Programming GPS, quick and dirty. What it is, the global GPS is a receiver of the global positioning system. There are multiple types of receivers that you can get your hands on. Buy what you can afford, train with, and use what you got. We're going to cover real quick how to program a GPS, understanding GPS limitations. GPS is a constellation of 24 operational satellites. The US government operates, maintains them for everyone in the world to use, even our adversaries. We have 31 up there. We've got a couple spares in case things go down. They're operating around 13,000 nautical miles, well, 12,550 miles above the surface of the Earth. They're sending out a radio signal. Your GPS receiver is receiving multiple of those signals. They need 4 to function. They don't have 4, they're not going to function. And they're keeping track of where those satellites are, and they're reconciling the differences in their orbit, and they're essentially keeping time in order to give you a location on the surface. There are multiple types of GPS receivers out there. We've got the old-fashioned wearables here. We've got touch screens. We've got hybrid receivers, satellite senders, responders that function interface with your smartphones. We got touch screens. We got the plugger type where we push buttons in order to navigate, program, and all types. I'll tell you right now. Well, now we're going to get into limitations, but moving on here, we've got our traditional analog push button. I know they're digital instruments, but analog push button types receivers. They're rugged. They're reliable. They have long battery lives. They have basic user interfaces, basic navigational interfaces, and some of them come with an optional emergency SOS communicator for those companies that offer those kinds of subscription services. Understand that if you leave your GPS on all the time and you're walking through the woods, thinking it's going to keep track of things for you, it's just going to do one thing: it's going to drain your battery. Okay, GPSs, don't think of them as your principal navigational instrument. Think of them as a tool to supplement what you're doing in the field and as a navigational aid and backup to your principal map and compass and protractor. Touchscreen and hybrid receivers and transmitters. A big one that everyone has in their pocket is their smartphone. When I was telling you earlier about my my little experience in the woods, of wilderness area behind my house, and I got lost from the weather change, my smartphone with the GPS is absolutely inoperative. Do yourself, and you can have an experiment at home. Do not send me the bill if or LT the bill if you mess up your phone. But go ahead and get your fingers a little bit wet and try to operate your screen, or go into the bathroom when it's you've had the shower on, it's humid. Your screen's not going to function. It's not going to like that at all. And when your fingers are numb and you're lost in the woods and things like that, Touchscreens, they have their limitations. Just want to cover that with you right now because I'm going to emphasize that some more. But we've got our hybrid instruments here that interface with your smartphones. Great resources, but understand they have their limitations. They do offer a detailed navigational interface, satellite text communications, emergency SOS if you're paying for that service. When you start putting these detailed maps and things up in front of, they're going to drain batteries. Understand that again, it's an electronic device. Your wet screen, touchscreen, they're not going to function. You can fall on them, they're going to crack the face. It is cool that they've got you can upload and download maps from them, and that you can pinch and zoom and things like that. But again, battery, right? And hey, we're hunters. We're going to be out in the field during late summer, fall, winter. What kills batteries quicker than anything else? The cold. And if you're relying on any of these things, especially these big battery suckers, these color detail interfaces plus the cold, and you're gonna find yourself your heart broken. Programming a GPS, right? Remember we're looking at this here earlier when we were looking at map legends. We got the World Geodetic Survey, World Geodetic System, 1984 here. And we got the US National Grid, USNG grid. Regardless of the GPS that you're using, this applies to the apps on your smartphone, the e-scouting tools that you use on your desktop, and the GPS receivers in your pocket. You're going to go to your system setups, and you're going to find your position format. And I'm encouraging you to select US National. You can select the UTM, UPS grid system, but I'm encouraging you to select US National. You're going to select UGS 84. I'm telling you, see this big bar right here, scroll right there? You can find yourself and create yourself all kinds of problems. Select UGS 84. Program and save that. It'll give you US National Grid System, WGS 84 is programmed. I recommend, again, distance and speed metric, because it'll then bark out at you a location format that you're familiar with. 11 Sierra, November Tango. Remember that? Just like we were working 11 Sierra, Kilo Bravo, and then the location format. Understands that GPSs have their limitations, including signal drift. Those satellites are floating around, everything is moving up there. That GPS receiver has to reconcile the position of those satellites with the location of the receiver. If you ever watch your position on one of these GPS apps, you watch it bounce around on the map while it tries to reconcile its location. GPS drift. Reflected signal. If you're in like a cliff area, like in Zion National Park, those signals can come down, bounce off, your receiver pick it up, and throw off your location. Hey, a cloudy sky, Pacific Northwest, an obstructed view, that satellite receiver, GPS receiver needs to be able to see the sky in order to function properly, in order to pick up those 4 satellites. If you can't see it, you're dead in the water. You're going to be back to map and compass. Failure to track the appropriate number of satellites. Like, hey, maybe you got a small receiver, maybe something else is interfering with its reception. It only picks up 3 instead of those 4, or 2 instead of those 4. It's not going to function properly. Again, limited cold weather function. Cold eats and kills batteries. If you have a GPS that you're going to rely on to get yourself out of trouble, save your life, keep it close to your body, keep it in a pocket, keep it somewhere against your body so it can keep those batteries warm as a means of saving your life. At night, don't leave that thing sitting by your pillow up there by your head while it drops below freezing outside in your sleeping bag. Take those electronic devices, be your smartphone, your GPS, your spare batteries, that spare lithium battery pack that you're carrying in your pocket, put it in a sock, put it in its own little special pouch, stuff it at the foot of your sleeping bag, get in your sleeping bag, keep that warm. That helps with the limited battery life. Also, carry that extra battery pack with you and appropriate charging cables so you can keep feeding those things. Last thing, you don't leave that GPS on running the entire time you're out in the field. You turn it on, you acquire your satellites, you get your grid coordinates, you plot your location on the map, you turn it off. Conserve your battery. Move on to your next point intermittently through the day, turn it back on, power it back up, pick up the satellites, take your location, plot on the map, turn it off, move on, conserve your battery life. If you leave that thing running all day because, hey, you've got this cool little tool that's dropping, letting your partner, your spouse know where you are and dropping breadcrumbs and then go log in and stuff like that. You think they're following you while you're in the woods. They're not following you while you're in the woods. Okay. You're just draining battery. Do yourself a favor, do everyone a favor, do Lieutenant Elliott and the posse that's coming out to save you a favor, save your battery life. Plot a GPS corner on the map. Stuff starting to come together quick and dirty. Remember these things? Protractors, right? You need these protractors in order to plot your location map. We got different scales for each thing here, right? Real quick. Remember earlier? Read right and up, right and up. Read topographic maps, right and up. Here's our protractor. For the sake of this demonstration, we're going to use a military protractor, 1 to 25,000 scale. Here I have a Cal Topo map that I printed for free, 11 Sierra Kilo Bravo USNG section, scale 1 to 25,000. You see right here, 1 to 25,000. It tells me that I need to use this triangle right here. This is the grid coordinate that our GPS is barking out to us. So we're out in the woods right now. I turn on my GPS. It acquires its satellites. It gives me these numbers. Barks out. You are at 11 Sierra Kilo Bravo 7658 7928. What does all that mean? I'll tell you right now. Remember, we read right and up. First thing we have to do is identify what grid square we're in. Remember, 1 square kilometer. We're going to focus on these first 2 numbers of these 8-digit coordinate. 7679, 7679, right and up, right and up. 76 to the right. Boom, there's a 76. 79, read right and up. Boom, there's a 79. 7679. Where does it intersect? It intersects right here. That tells us that we are operating in this grid square right here. Our GPS knows that we are here. Now we're going to use these 2 digits at the end of these 4-digit coordinates to bring us to within 10 meters of the location that our GPS receiver is giving us. Hey, sidebar. You go to Kinko's, FedEx Kinko's, they print up a map for you. You have a 1 in 25,000, 1 in 50,000 scale, or 1 in 24,000 scale. You have to check before you walk away with the map that map is printed to the appropriate scale. You know, sometimes they'll just print a JPEG or a map on an AHE by 11 to what fits the paper best as opposed to full scale. You don't check this before you walk out of there, you can find yourself in some trouble. Where did my mouse go? I know you're moving. I see you on there. There it is. Come on. There we go. So real quick, you see how I take my my protractor and I line up this end right here with that end right there to show me that grid coordinate, that grid square is square within my protractor. I know that the map is printed to the appropriate scale that I need it to be, regardless if it's a 124,000, 150,000, 125,000. It doesn't matter. You have to check this before you walk out of there. I had like 100 maps printed by Kinko's, and I checked it before I walked out to do one of our land nav classes, and they were all messed up. Right? We read to the right and up. Remember, right and up. So we've got Mount Broderick here, and it is, well, we've got our grid square here. We're going to move our protractor 7658. You see the numbers here on the bottom of my protractor as I slide them across. I've got 765, 2, 4, 6, 8, 7658. Come on, don't fight with me. There we go. And then I count up. Go back to my slide here. With me. Current slide. There we go. And then I count up 7928 and 79 1, 2, 2, 4, 6, 8. I take my pencil. I make a mark on the paper in front of me. Can everyone see my laser pointer moving on the screen in front of you?
Yes.
Okay. I make my mark right there. Boom. Make my mark. You see 765, line 76, the number 5 in my protractor, 2, 4, 6, 8 lines up here. I make it square right there. I count up 7928, 1, 2, 2, 4, 6, 8. I make my mark here because I'm reading right and up. I'm reading right and up. I move my protractor. It gives me a known point that I am standing at of Mount Broderick, Kilo Sierra 11 Bravo 7658. I plotted that point that my GPS receiver was barking out at me on this map, and it turns out I'm on top of Mount Broderick. Let's check our work. Right, 11 Sierra Kilo Bravo 7658 7928. I hope I remember that correctly. Plug that in there. This was a fantastic tool in itself. This topo, this National Geographic, and what we have there, we're right on top of Mount Broderick. So we take a GPS coordinate that's being barked out to us on our receiver. We take that protractor, we take our topographic map, we read right and up, we can plot our location on the map. And at this point, we know where we are. We can turn off, we can power down our GPS receiver to conserve the battery. We can break out those nice high-powered Japanese or Swiss-made pieces of glass. We can glass into an area. Quick and dirty, right? Quick and dirty. Let me jump back to our presentation here. LT, questions popping up on that?
No, we're good.
Excellent. What's next? All right, we're working on putting together Land Wilderness Navigation for Hunters 101, which covers all this in greater depth, including good stuff that you didn't get tonight. 101 and 102 dates to be determined. It's a lot of man hours, a lot of material to put together. We've done this in the past, basic land navigation field training exercises. The last one we had was literally 4 years ago on February 29th, leap year of 2020. Just as the world was shutting down for COVID, we slid this in at the last minute. They shut down in-person training this following day. We're going to do that. We're going to do an intermediate land navigation field training exercise and an advanced land navigation field training exercise for people who filter up through those opportunities. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to put up with me for the last 2 minutes and listen to me. My kids don't give me this kind of respect. My spouse doesn't give me this kind of respect. I can't believe the LT, this job he's putting up with me is hearing me out, but I want to thank every single member of our attending team.
Anyway, I'm going to sign off now. Thank you so much, Andrew. We'll talk later.
It's my pleasure, everybody. Thank you so much. I'll
Take
see
care.
you in future.